First up is Jeffer. Okay, that all came together. Just kind of watch that again. I think that's good, that zoom in part. I don't think I'm really buying the that kind of fitting to the gun because it doesn't match closely enough, and then you kind of left wondering why it does that somewhat awkward move to the corner. So I might just think of a simpler transition to get out, and it would be neat if these reflections moved along the surface. Yeah, the render looks alright. I think the camera move, through the train is an alright choice, and the town came together. I guess I would just say for your Arnold render, it'll take longer, but you can try increasing the sampling settings. I can show you what I mean. In your render settings here, under Arnold renderer, you've got all the sampling settings. So the kind of simplest, laziest one is to just increase this one, and you should see that it's less grainy, although that can slow down your render. So, just work your way up a little bit at a time and do some test renders if you're going to increase. But overall, yeah, this is looking good, and it's good that you got it all put together. Next up is Ariana, and it looks like you've got a ways to go on this. It's very squished, this train station, from this angle. I think it'd be much thicker. Or maybe you've scaled it down? I don't know. Kind of looks like you did, because even the barrel there is squished, so I would get that back to here. It looks like it should be something like that. Right? Or maybe like that. Now it's looking more normal. So I'm not sure why. Maybe even more. Just hit my up arrow. Just sort of using that sphere as a guide. So you got things evenly. Yeah, that looks a lot better. But yeah, this is not a complete assignment. If you go to the description here, you'll see you submit the first two shots of your film, everything from the title shot to the established shot rendered together with the transitions. So I can't really give you credit for this assignment. Just let me, I guess when you're ready, turn that in, and you can get credit for that at that time. Next up is Mercedes. Okay, so looks like you've got it put together. I think that's okay. It's a little quick. It doesn't give us much time to look at the ballet image, so you might want to slow that down or give that more time in the ballet image, or maybe just have it end in the ballet image and not have it spread those lines apart again. This image looks like it's got a lot of JPEG compression going on. So I don't know if that's in the source image or something about the way you've compressed it afterwards, but you might try to get a cleaner image to begin with. This one's a little better, but it still looks a little bit low resolution from the screen. I think the transition's very abrupt. I think it just sort of dissolved from one into the other. Also, this looks elongated, so it looks like you may have stretched out the image a little bit, and it looks like it's been play blast but not rendered. Finally, I would say that the camera angle on here is not great because it's a little the framing of them is odd, and then you're not seeing any of the background. And I think you could frame something that has a little bit more of the background in it to improve it. So yeah, I mean, it's good you got everything together, but I think there's several things you can improve on, including a better camera, end position, rendering the scene rather than just play blasting. Make sure you get the aspect ratio right. It looks like you've stretched out the image, and then a better transition between the two, like a dissolve or a dip to black between the title sequence and the animation. This is Kobe. Okay, that came together all right. Let's just take another look. This logo and title seems to work okay. This is a bit static. They do have that bouncing through, although the timing, that's a little funny. You might try to smooth out the motion of that. I like that it dissolves between the two. It's good that you got an Arnold renderer. But one thing that's very strange is if it's an outdoor sunlit thing, you would only have shadows in one direction. But as you can see, you've got two sets of shadows, one casting in this direction and another casting in that direction. And that doesn't really make sense for a sunlit screen. A sunlit scene, there should just be one shadow and one shadow direction. So if you needed a fill light from another angle, you should turn off shadows for that light rather than having two sets of shadows. Also, if you wanted to clean up the render, you could turn off the sampling on the Arnold render options, which I show in the first part of this video and another assignment. So yeah, so a few improvements in there, but overall, apart from those, it's come together okay. Okay, this is Kendra. All right. So yeah, that all worked. I think the opener's all right. Might want to try a different font there, or different position on the screen. I like the fire, and the dissolve worked out well. And the camera move's going okay, but I think, if you just stopped there, I think you had it, you were done. But then you do this whole sort of second camera move, and then we end up with what I would argue is not a very well composed backdrop because there's sort of nothing behind them. So I think that had you just ended the shot, where it stopped the first time, you would have been much better off. It's an interesting composed shot. There's an object in the foreground. The characters are on a third roughly. So they're in a kind of a good position. There's a lot of interest in here, so that would have been great, but then the camera kept going, and that was sort of odd. So just simplify that and cut it out sooner. And as mentioned on the other one, you can try messing with these sampling settings to get a smoother looking render. This is Ariana. Okay, so I think the title sequence could be improved. The text looks very sort of generic, and things like outlines and drop shadows generally make things look a little less professional. So a combination of not a great font choice, the font's changing size, the drop shadows, the outlines, all of it makes it look sort of amateurish. So I would go for like a simpler choice there. And same here, I would try a different font. And so I generally think the title sequence needs some work. It kind of lacks some detail and animation, and then kind of more thoughtful about the text. Um, and then the sort of abrupt transition where it'd be nicer if it either did a dissolve or a dip down to black and back up. Here the camera is very kind of hesitant and swings around a lot, and you were starting to get an okay. You never really kind of get a nice shot onto these kind of standing characters, but then the camera kind of just zooms right by them and then spins around and then backs up again, and then I don't know what we're ended up inside someone's head or something. I don't know exactly what happened there, but I really think you should just a much simpler camera move. I mean, if it just moved kind of straight in on those guys, that would be fine. But what you have is a lot of extra keyframes and it's kind of swimming around. So much more simplified camera move. If you can do an Arnold render of the scene, that's also better. And then I think the title sequence could use some work as well. Okay, this is Princeton. Okay, so that all came together. I like the cartoony nature of the opener. I think that works well. I like the gunshots; those came out well. Maybe something to get this to fit into the sign more, like maybe lose the drop shadow and then uh, maybe use like a blending mode that's different to kind of show some of the texture of the wood through, or do something to make, because it's just you have such kind of a complex texture on the background, but then you have this very sort of solid color text, and it sort of feels like you want it to kind of fit into that sign more, to be a believable part of that sign. And one way to do that would be either to add a little bit of transparency or play with the blending layer, like try whether it's a darken, a lighten, one of those kinds of blending layers. Dissolve works good. It's good that you got the Arnold render with the lights and shadows. And yeah, I think if you wanted to improve the render, as I mentioned before, you could up the sampling settings. But overall, this is looking good.